So good afternoon, committee members. You can hear me, right? The audio is fine. Yes, okay, no problem. So good afternoon, committee members. It's the time of the day right now, and we have made quorum. So I now declare the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Committee officially begins. So I would like to remind everyone that if you want to speak, you have to show your face on Zoom, and the microphones will only be unmuted upon my instructions. When participating in the Zoom meeting, please use the designated backgrounds that we have sent you. And during the meeting, if you would like to submit any documents, please send the documents to the email account of our panel. And the panel's email has already been sent to you in our previous circulation. So now we enter agenda number 1, information papers issued since the last meeting. So since the last meeting, the Secretariat has issued the following papers. It's already listed on the agenda. It's the letter dated 4th of March year 2022 for the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs on the reappointment of Chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission. So if there are no questions, then I'll move on to item number 2 on the agenda, items for discussion at the next meeting. So the items for discussion at the next meeting, please first refer to the list of outstanding items for discussion, and the next meeting will be held on the 14th of April on Monday. And the government proposed the following 2 outstanding items, including the a brief overview of the Personal Privacy Ordinance Commissioner's work report. So this was originally scheduled for discussion during the March discussion, but because of the pandemic, we had rescheduled to the next regular panel meeting. So if there are no any objections, we would arrange for the discussion of the aforementioned issues in the next scheduled meeting. So here, I'd like to also tell everyone, before the meeting, I have received certain opinions from some of our members. Because of the pandemic, we have one less panel than originally scheduled. So now, as you know, when we first began this session of the legislative year, everybody has placed a lot of agenda items on our list. And I'd like to tell the government that we hope in the future, during the panel's meetings that we do have, if possible, I hope that you could listen to the opinions of our panel members. And for items which are of a certain urgency or needs to be handled, perhaps you could handle them on our agenda, because we have one less meeting than originally scheduled. So in the future meetings, where we will have future meetings. So if possible, I hope that the Secretary perhaps we can add new agenda items on the agenda to discuss matters that everybody hopes to discuss. So some of our committee members have expressed their opinions to me about this already. And with this opportunity, I would like to reflect, inform the Secretary of those opinions. So if there are no further comments, we will enter item number 3 on our agenda. So this is the first item for discussion, is the Electoral Affairs Commission report on the 2021 Legislative Council General Election. So firstly, I would like to invite Secretary Eric Tsang from the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs to introduce the policy paper, and then I would like to invite all our council members to participate in our panel committee meeting and its subsequent discussions. So perhaps I'll first hand the floor over to Mr. Tsang or his colleagues. Mr. Tsang, please. Thank you, Chairman. So the year 2021 Legislative Council elections have been concluded successfully last year. And according to the Electoral and Cap 541 of the electoral laws, we have already submitted a report to the Chief Executive. The report has detailed the preparation work we have done for this election, its arrangements, and the complaints. And we have also proposed some improvement and suggestions. Overall, the Electoral Affairs Commission thinks that this election is held under a public and fair and honest manner. So with regards to, we are satisfied with the overall arrangement of this election. And the EAC also points out that perhaps the elections could be further improved. We can look into those matters. For example, electronic voter roll registration system and some delays in opening some polling stations, handling of delayed votings or wrongful misplaced ballots, etc., and also the corresponding manpower handling measures of the EAC. We have proposed a series of measures, and I would follow up on these measures with the EAC. The report is published to the public on the 12th of April. The government thanks the EAC for handling the election for the 2021 Legislative Council election and to look into the possible areas of improvement, and we welcome their opinions in the report. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Raymond Wong Man-Chu, Chief Electoral Officer at the REO, to talk about the report. So thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. So the year 2021 LegCo election report, it talks about the preparations, the arrangements, and the improvement measures for those report. It also proposed certain suggestions on improvements. So I will talk about those improvements. Firstly, the electronic voter roll registration system. So in 636 polling stations, in 596 of those polling stations with internet equipped, we have adopted the electronic voter roll system to issue ballots. So the overall operation of the systems have been smooth, but in 7 polling stations, because the electronic system is impacted by electrical issues or networking connectivity issues, due to instabilities in those systems, we have to delay the elections by 3 to 22 minutes. So the EAC has decided to extend the opening hours of the polling stations accordingly. So on those polling stations, we are trying to test the stability of the wireless information transmission system. If it's stable enough, we can consider use the 5G technology in those polling stations, using a wireless network to connect with the electronic voter roll registration system. And the EAC also recommends that we could continue to improve the performance of this system and to further enhance the stability and efficiency of said system. And the day before the vote, there are 160 polling stations because the contractual internet provider and the subcontractors' technical staff did not arrive on site to perform necessary installations on site. Therefore, that has delayed the overall progress of these polling stations. In the end, we have to allocate a 40-man team from the special IT team at the EAC. And with the help of the Assistant Secretary of Information and Technology, we have been able to complete the network installation work for those polling stations. With regards to the aforementioned issue, our advice is that we should install the local networks onto those polling stations earlier on in order to reduce the volume of demand for technical staff at the day before the election. And furthermore, when it comes to supporting technology of the election itself, we would consider hiring from the government's own team internally in order to enhance the quality and stability of said service. And thirdly, we need to explore into the possibility of hiring other internet service providers so that we could absorb more competent technical staff from the labor markets. And furthermore, in terms of providing training and practice and for our voting staff, we believe that the successful hosting of these elections means that providing adequate training to such staff is absolutely necessary. And the EAC has recommended that in the future, we should continue to enhance the amount of training we offer to the voting staff, polling staff, to train them in the techniques pertaining to hosting elections. And as there are more and more voters registered on the voting rolls, the election is getting bigger and bigger. Organizing subsequent elections would require more civil servants participating in the relevant work. Therefore, the EAC recommends the REO to increase the amount of relevant training on hosting elections to throughout the entire civil service team. And we should consult the civil service on that issue. And thirdly, when it comes to citizens from the mainland returning to Hong Kong to vote. So in 2019, because of COVID-19, therefore, some voters who are living in the mainland who wishes to come back to Hong Kong to vote, in Lo Wu, Lok Ma Chau, and in Shenzhen Bay, on these three entry points to Hong Kong, we have set up polling stations. The EAC thinks that the arrangements and the operations of these polling stations are, broadly speaking, smooth. And this one-time special measure, should it apply to other public elections, the EAC believes that this depends on the actual situation. And with regards to voting within our Hong Kong's borders, the EAC thinks that Hong Kong should adopt its effective election systems, which we have always been using. The election involves complicated matters, and the EAC thinks that the government, when it comes to policies and laws, you should conduct a detailed survey. And after ample discussion amongst society, we should do all those things before we arrive at a decision. And furthermore, in the future, in our elections, we should use more information technology. And in this election, we have adopted the electronic voter registration system to issue ballots. And we also used an electronic system to calculate and count the votes in our certain electoral areas. So overall, this has been more efficient. And the EAC believes that this has strengthened the confidence citizens have in using electronic systems in our elections, and this has built a good and solid foundation for future further digitalization of our voting process. So the EAC thinks that the REO should proactively look into using electronic vote counting in elections with more registered voters, in order to accelerate the progress of counting votes. In terms of electronic ballot casting, apart from the fact that this involves changing electoral laws potentially, we should also be able to monitor the identity of the confidentiality and privacy of the voters, and to ensure the stability of our voting system. And the REO should continue to explore and look into the feasibility of electronic voting. So in Hong Kong public elections, should we use electronic voting? That is actually a issue with a long and deep impact. And the EAC believes that before arriving at a decision, the society should discuss these matters extensively. Most importantly, we should make sure that members of the public are confident in the electronic system. Apart from the aforementioned recommendations, with regards to the other recommendations that the EAC have, we have already listed them in the policy paper for your reference, and we are more than happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Thank you to our colleagues for offering that brief introduction. So right now, I see that there are 6 panel members who have lined up to ask questions. Let me look at the order. Oh, there are 2 more right now. So let me read out the list that I got just now. The order is Councillor Leung Mei Fen, Councillor Dick Chi Yuen, Councillor Liu Chang Gong, Councillor Lei Ho Yin, Councillor Zhang Kwok Kwan, Councillor Regina Ip, and just now I saw that Councillor Sun Dong and Councillor Lam San Keung has also raised their hands. So now I would say that we would have 4 minutes per question, and I will make sure everybody adheres to the time limit. So firstly, Madam Leung, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. So I noticed that in the report EAC published last year, there are over 27,000 invalid ballots. It's about 2% last year in regional elections. In the functional constituencies, there's more invalid ballots, and particularly in social welfare, there was 8.7% invalid ballots. So in these several functional constituencies with such a high number of invalid votes, has the government looked into this matter? Are there any suspected activity of inciting other people to cast invalid votes or blank ballots? That's my first question. Secondly, last year, we have amended the electoral laws and anti-corruption laws, and we have added that we cannot publicly incite other people to cast invalid ballots or blank ballots. So in last year's Legislative Council, what have the government done in terms of following up, and have we prosecuted anyone or warned anyone that they might have broken this law? In other words, inciting others to not cast their votes. Those are the two questions.
Secretary, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Leung, for the questions. First of all, let me talk about the arrangement concerning so-called white ballot papers. This time, with improvement of the electoral system, the law has been amended. So in other words, publicly inducing people to not to vote or to put in white ballot sheets, well, this is banned. After the law is amended, ICAC, in view of such criminal acts or complaints, had done some investigation. According to our records, up to now, there are 14 such complaints. And ICAC has conducted investigation. As of 31st March, there were 6 cases in which investigation was completed, and there are 8 cases where investigation is ongoing. 12 people were arrested. According to DOJ's legal advice, 3 people were already prosecuted. Some time ago, you may have read from the media that there were 2 cases where prosecution was successful, and the convicted persons were punished already. So when it comes to abetting or soliciting or inducing people not to vote or to put in invalid votes, there will be the right law enforcement procedures. As regards the voting situation, if you look at the previous LegCo general election for GCs, there were 14,561 invalid votes. For FCs, 2,285. So comparing with 2016 LCGE, the numbers had come down. In 2016, for GCs, around 20,000 invalid votes. Comparing with 2012, there were a few thousand more. And for FCs in 2016, 4,300 odd invalid votes. And comparing with 2012, 2,000 odd, again, it was fewer. So the situation is not more serious in relation to invalid votes. The government has also taken law enforcement efforts against such acts. Thank you. Okay. Next, Mr. Dick Chi Yun. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the report is very detailed, talking about inadequacies and suggestions for improvements. So I would like to ask regarding IT now. It is good to digitalize the whole voting process so that more people can participate. Does the government have a timetable on implementing electronic voting? Electronic voting is not something new. That's my first question. Second, concerning the voting turnout rate, 98% for ECC, 30% for GC, and so on. So the situation is very different from the past. In the past, 50% turnout rate or above. Did the government review why this time turnout rate is so much lower? In the future, how can you enhance voter participation? Now, turnout rate being low, this is not good. So much work has been done about the election campaign. We want people to take active part. So how can we improve the current situation? Thank you, Secretary. 2 questions, one on electronic voting, the other on voter turnout. Yes, thank you, Mr. Dick, for the questions. First, concerning digitalizing voting. Well, all along we have been working hard in using technology to enhance efficiency of election. In the past 2 years, the administration and also EAC and REO have been working hard to enhance efficiency and accuracy of election. We have also introduced the electronic poll register arrangement. Now, for electronic counting, we do have the plan to do that over a large scale, but because of the pandemic, R&D work has been delayed. So this time, in the LegCo general election, in the ECC, so we are using electronic counting arrangement. In the future, for future election work, we hope that we can make more use of electronic technology and automation to enhance efficiency and accuracy of election. Just now, Mr. Wong said that for electronic voting in the future, well, actually, EAC had suggested that after in-depth discussion and study, we hope that the public will have confidence in electronic voting. And then after that, we can implement it. We will continue to do our work. So after the electoral system improvement, 2 important elections have taken place. Very soon, we will have the CE election. When that is conducted or done successfully, we will do a review. We hope that there would be some concrete options for us to consult LegCo. As regards the voter turnout, as Mr. Dick Chi Yun said, in the LCGE, well, some voter turnout numbers were given. I think the situation is not that bad. The turnout rate is not really low. For GC, 30%, FC more than 30%, ECC almost 99% turnout rate. I don't think these rates are low. Some time ago, I learned from overseas media that in some advanced countries like New York and France, the turnout rate is around 20 or 30%. So in advanced democratic countries, the turnout rate is not really very high. And we have said a number of times that we like to see patriots ruling Hong Kong. And we hope that 1 country, 2 systems can have long-term development. Hong Kong can enjoy long-term stability and prosperity. And this is a democratic system suitable for Hong Kong's long-term development. So in the past, there was high turnout rates, but please don't forget, at that time in Hong Kong, there was Black Riot. There are many anti-Chinese people going into the councils through election. So is that beneficial to the long-term development of Hong Kong? I'm sure you have your answers in your mind. So I hope that you will continue to support us to improve the electoral system. And then we can maintain our long-term development. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Next, Mr. Liu Cheng Kong, please. Thank you, Chairman. Last year in the LCGE, well, basically, it was completed successfully. So 90 members were successfully returned. Well, talking about EAC's report, I have 2 questions. First, according to 111.11 to 111.13 of the report. That is about the absence of technicians in relation to the electronic poll register. Now, the service contractors must provide 1,000 workers, but then the contractor has not deployed the right number of technicians to work on time. As a result, there was delay in the work that needs to be done. This is not something small. So I want to know, for this company at that time, was any explanation given why this had happened, and did the administration do any investigation? Second, concerning the REO's tendering, what are the selection criteria? Number 3, in the ECC election, this company was also employed. So it seems that they are not going to make any political moves in LegCo election. But then this seems to reflect that this company lacks respect in election-related work. So not enough importance has been attached. In the future, will this company be hired in all aspects of work, not only election? Just now, Mr. Dick Chi-yuen talked about voter turnout. For those between 18 to 24 years old, turnout rate was only 6.6%. So this may be because some young people have misunderstanding about the electoral system. So now, does the government have some ways or channels to do publicity and explanation to young people? For example, working with youth groups and also various social media. If yes, what are the actual initiatives? Thank you. Secretary, the external contractor. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Liu Cheng-kong for the question. On 18th of December, well, that was the date of that incident. So it was the day before election. We had 600 odd polling stations, and very often we need to do wiring work so that the signals can be connected to our poll register. Well, that day, some contractors, technicians did not follow the work arrangements. They did not go to the polling stations to do on-site wiring work. At that time, we contacted the contractor, and the contractor explained that they had around 1,000 technicians. But not all technicians are the contractor's employees, because the number of people required is so big, and so they need to outsource the work. So they need also external technicians to do the work that day. Based on their explanation at that time, there were some technicians who originally promised to come, but they did not turn up eventually. As a result, that day at some polling stations, there was no worker carrying out the wiring work. So as a result, we immediately adopted some contingency measures. EAC and REO arranged people from the government information office and also REO's technicians and workers at the polling stations to work together to do remedial work and wiring work. As a result, on the 18th, well, the related wiring work was successfully completed. And for the contractor, well, they immediately sent people to help do the work. But of course, there is no doubt that the contractor did not comply with the contractual requirements. So according to the contract, we took some actions and imposed some penalty against the contractor. Besides, this time, because of the contractor's mistake, well, our confidence in their work, in election-related work, was undermined. So this time for CE election, we no longer hire this contractor for the work. So we will also look at their past track record to see whether there was any adverse record in selecting. As regards voter turnout, well, of course, this time with an improved electoral system, the government will do our best to do publicity. For example, on our websites and on different occasions in our election work, we will make sure that patriots will rule Hong Kong and the electoral system can be improved. These are the most important principles. We hope that the public will have better understanding of improvement to the electoral system. In the future, we hope that they will give us support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lee Ho Yin. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank my colleagues and the Secretary. I have 3 questions that I have to think about, one large problem and 2 minor problems. The large problem is the first problem that Councillor Liu Changgong has mentioned. Just now, the Secretary has offered a detailed explanation on how to follow up on that, but I'd like to follow up on that. Firstly, the so-called punitive measures in accordance with the contract, what exactly would happen. But of course, you have signed non-disclosure agreements in your contract, but roughly speaking, what will happen? And firstly, apart from not using them at the CE elections, would you in the future handle them, blacklist them in the subsequent elections, etc.? Because the transgression is rather egregious, it's unacceptable, no matter what scenario we're talking about. And it's quite an unreasonable breach of contract. That's the first problem. And the second problem is that in the Chapter 4 on the page 27 of the policy document, it has shown the issue about doxing. And on the 31st of July in year 2021, and the government has already submitted relevant bill drafts on that particular law, and doxing is now a criminal offense. So my first question is that in the year 2021 LCGE elections, when it comes to doxing and internet bullying, compared with the 2019 district council elections, were there less cases of such bullying? Or do you have statistics and for our comparison? That's the second question. And thirdly, in the page 63 to 64 from the report, you actually touched upon that previously. In the report, you've also said that when it comes to voters coming back from the mainland to Hong Kong to vote, and what the arrangements would there be? I would like to know, in the future, would these arrangements be implemented onto other public elections, and what would the expected outcome be? Even though you have touched upon that in your report, but it's about the matters of principle in a rather broad sense. Would you have a more specific and concrete measures and things that you might do? Thank you. Thank you. Secretary, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for Councillor Lee's question. So firstly, it's about the punitive measures on the relevant subcontractor. I hope that you understand. When it comes to the specifics, because of the contracts and the non-disclosure agreements, I might not be able to talk about it here and now, but mainly we have made deductions pertaining to the payments, etc. It's a punitive deduction. And in the future, for other parts, like in this time in the CE elections, we did not hire that subcontractor. And in the future, will we hire them again? That would depend on what happens then. But of course, in the past, if you have a bad record because of that issue, that incident, that would be part of our considerations. And Councillor Lee mentioned the doxing during the elections and what kind of statistics we have about that. I do not have those information on hand right now. Perhaps after the panel committee's meeting, I could provide that information to you. And furthermore, about voters coming back from the mainland to Hong Kong to vote and the arrangements therein, I want to say that this is because of the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, the anti-pandemic controls in the borders of both regions. There are some special arrangements. Therefore, we have made special arrangements accordingly in setting up polling stations at the border. Will we adopt similar measures in the future? That would depend on what happens then, and we will make a decision then. Because, as you know, under normal circumstances, it's not very difficult to come back to Hong Kong to vote. Therefore, in the past, we do not have particular arrangements for that. It's just because during the pandemic, we hope that we could empower these voters to cast their votes. That's why we have made special arrangements. In the future, we will make arrangements according to the situation. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Next is from Councillor Cheung Kwok Kwan. Thank you. I have two questions. First question is following up on Councillor Liu's question about the installation, about the punitive measures pertaining to the installation of internet systems, right? Under the current system, when it comes to subcontracting or PPP, right? If you are saying that you are going to punish them according to the contract, that might not be a proper way of handling. Starting from 1998, when we have a new Chek Lap Kok Airport, we have seen these things happen. Like after the PPP, there's something wrong with the PPP. In the end, the government told us that they would be punished in accordance with the contract, and they would the fees would be deducted. That's something that happened afterwards, right? That's a remedial measure. But this does not prevent, it does not solve the fundamental cause of behind those problems. So I think the government, starting from 1998, the new airport to date, in this new election, when it comes to PPP or subcontracting, how could you prevent and root out these problems? Please do not just consider punitive measures in the contract, right? Think about other more effective measures. Secondly, it's about digitalization of our electoral system. Hong Kong is a smart city, but our elections is not necessarily as smart. In this election, we have tried electronic vote counting, and at least we have done that for one constituency and in one election. So have you made a relevant assessment in this regard? I'm talking about the ECC constituencies. How, in those 1,000 odd votes, how many hours did it take us to count it? And in those hours, how many of the time is actually involved in using the machine, using the system? And how much of that time is allocated to preparation work in advance? I hope that you could tell me. Because according to our observations, we used a lot of time in putting the votes in the bag, out of the bag, and to see if the direction orientation is correct, whether the votes are complete, etc. We have wasted a lot of time, so we weren't really able to really increase the efficiency of electronic vote counting. So how could we improve this system for the functional constituencies, so even the geographical constituencies? Because ultimately, when it comes to the electronic voting system, we want to reduce the amount of time we spend counting the votes in the geographical constituencies. But just putting from what we see that we are moving at a very slow pace, as if we are evolving from primates to man. So I think the so-called efficiency arising from electronic vote counting is just a mirage. I hope that you could talk about that. So, Secretary, it's about the subcontractor issue and the electronic vote counting issue. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cheung, and thank you, Chairman. So firstly, about the subcontractor. Of course, as I've said, in accordance with the contract, we have adopted punitive measures, and we have deducted the fees that they would get in accordance to the contract. Of course, this is not everything that we have done. And as I've said, in this election, the CE election, we did not hire that same subcontractor. I think for the subcontractor, if the government is used to using their service, because their service, the service that they provide is not ideal, if we do no longer use their services in the next next election, that would be a serious blow to the subcontractor's reputation, I think. So that in and of itself is a warning to make sure that the subcontractor understands that if you cannot handle the electoral work properly, not only would you be punished according to the contract, it would have also a negative impact on your company's reputation. I think that's also a deterrent. And when it comes to counting the votes during these elections, last time I was there on site, I have observed the entire vote count process. When we are using the automatic vote counting machine to count the votes, it did not take a particularly long time. So Councillor Cheung's observations were quite correct. After all, the vote counting process involves many steps. You have to split the votes, and after split the votes, you have to check if the votes are okay. And then we pile it into a neat pile and then put it in a bag, and only then would we start to count the votes. And after counting the votes, we have to look at the problematic votes to see, well, the electoral officer have to see if the vote is valid or not. Overall, when it comes to progressing with these few steps, after the elections have come to a close at 10:30 p.m. On the day, we were able to announce the results by 2 a.m. to half past 2 a.m. So I hope Councillor Cheung understand why would the process and the steps look very convoluted and look very time consuming, because after all, in the Hong Kong elections, what we emphasize is fair and just and honest. So we have always had a very good reputation in this regard. In that process, for each step along the way, if you look at it detailedly, if you look at it carefully, each of these steps are mandated by relevant laws, the purpose of which is to make sure that the election could be held in a fair and just and honest manner. Of course, during the election, well, for the average person, for the layman, you may think that the procedures may be a bit unnecessary, but overall, this is because we try to achieve those ends. In the future, we will continue to review the relevant measures and relevant arrangements based on the current situation. Perhaps we could optimize our arrangements in accordance with the current needs, and we would continue to work on that. We would look at these matters with the EAC and the REO, and if necessary, we would not preclude the possibility of further optimizing and improving the processes in order to increase the efficiency. And if any changes to the law would be necessary, we would consider doing that definitely. So next questions come from Councillor Regina Ip. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask about voter turnout. So I think 30% is not a low turnout per se, because after all, this is a new electoral system. Actually, in 2019 and 2019, we hosted election. Last year in November, when we talk about the voting turnout on new NYC, New York City elections, the voter rate is just 20-ish, is 20-something%. So I think 30% for a new electoral system is pretty good. But as a candidate participating in elections, one of the reasons why the voter turnout is low is perhaps due to the changes in the borders of the geographical constituencies. One of the more confusing changes is Hong Kong Island East and Hong Kong Island West. And Hong Kong Island West includes the faraway islands. And a lot of people say that, oh, I thought that I counted as a new territory west, particularly Sha Tin is divided into now northeast and south, divided into two different constituencies. A lot of people do not know that they have now shifted to an NT southeast geographical constituencies. I don't think there's been enough ad campaigns about these new changes. I want to ask the Secretary, do you foresee any further changes of these GC boundaries in the future? And would this be adopted in district council elections? And thirdly, how could you emphasize and how could you make sure that you educate the voters when it comes to these changes in the electoral boundaries? So before I invite the secretary to answer this question, I would like to note what councillors have lined up to answer these questions. We have Councillor Sun Dong, Councillor Lim San Keung, Councillor Yim Gong, and Councillor Jie Wai Zhen. So I would cut the queue after Councillor Jie. So because after this agenda item, we have further agendas meeting. So after Councillor Jie's question, I will end the agenda item here. So Secretary, let me remind you, please pay attention to the clock when you answer your question. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for Councillor Yip's question. So firstly, it's about the boundaries issue. In the past, always in accordance with the requirements of the law, the EAC will make corresponding arrangements when it comes to redrawing the district lines. It's mainly in accordance with the population there and the number of people there to draw the lines accordingly. Because of this time, we have improved our electoral system. In terms of the time, we don't really have that much time. Therefore, we did not arrange for public consultations. In the future, when we are going to host large elections, the relevant departments will continue to review the process and when they redraw the boundaries. And if necessary, we would first consult the public before we arrive at a decision. And furthermore, in terms of ad campaigns and educating the voters, we would continue to do more work in this regard through various channels, including our dedicated website and other ad campaigns, etc., like media, online, etc., various platforms. We will further talk about our work after improving these systems, including the redrawing of these boundaries. We will continue to do such work. Of course, we hope that in the future, as just Councillor Yip has mentioned, the voter turnout, even though this is one of the most important elections after the improvement of the electoral system, the voter turnout is not too low, but we hope that in the future, through further ad campaigns and education, etc., we will be able to enhance the public's understanding and support of this new system, and therefore we hope we would see a better voter turnout.
My question about district council has not been answered. Will you do the same for district councils? Well, it all depends on the new government's arrangement concerning district councils. If it is necessary, if there is the need for election, then we will work according to the law to mark the districts. Thank you. Thank you, member. Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. Sun Dong, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the explanation. Just now, you said that because of the pandemic, for the first time, you arranged Hong Kong people on the mainland to vote at the boundary control point. I think this is a very good and important attempt. Well, Hong Kong people, there are a few 100,000 Hong Kong people on the mainland. If there is not this temporary arrangement, well, in the future, in Beijing, Shanghai, do you think it is possible to set up a few polling points? So yes, you said that Hong Kong people can come back, but when we are talking about a few 100,000 Hong Kong people, how many of them will be willing to come back to Hong Kong to vote? I think we should perfect the voting arrangements on the mainland. This is also an important part of improving the electoral system. You just mentioned electronic voting. I think this is very important. In many Western countries, well, they have set up polling stations in Hong Kong. So in the mainland, well, Hong Kong has many different offices. So I think we can encourage Hong Kong people to vote on the mainland or to register. So they can also arrange registration addresses. So first of all, this can make it convenient for Hong Kong people to vote. I think after election, the most important thing is to make voting convenient. And second, well, there are some Hong Kong offices on the mainland, and I think they should play a role as bridge to connect Hong Kong people on the mainland. And number 3, for the sake of long-term political development of Hong Kong, we should do some good preparation work, because at the end of the day in Hong Kong, there will be universal suffrage. So I think now we should start to do preparation work earlier. These are my comments. Thank you. Thank you. Secretary, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Sun, for your comments and suggestions. First of all, as Mr. Sun just said, we attach a lot of importance to Hong Kong people on the mainland. Well, their right to vote is very important. So because of that, during the pandemic, well, when there is special arrangements about crossing the boundary, we have put in place arrangements or polling stations at the boundary control points. This shows that we are very concerned about Hong Kong people's right to vote on the mainland. Now, voting on the mainland, in the past we said many times that this in itself involves law, actual implementation, and coordination with the mainland. We need to consider in a detailed way in many of these arrangements in order to come up with a concrete proposal. Well, so far, well, before there is a very comprehensive consideration, I don't think we should just put in place such an arrangement in a hasty way. However, we are not saying that we won't consider this arrangement, because at present, concerning the Hong Kong people's right to vote on the mainland, well, we give a lot of importance to it. We are thinking of ways how to make things convenient for Hong Kong people on the mainland to exercise their right to vote. So in the future, if we have any concrete ideas, and if we can solve those practical issues, then we will consult LegCo members' views. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. Lam San Kang, please. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Sun Dong just showed concern to a point. That is exactly what I want to ask. Of course, the Secretary has given some answers, but then I don't think those are enough. Mr. Li Ho-yin, Mr. Sun Dong, and I are very concerned about that. So let me supplement. In the report, it is stated that there are 3 boundary control points and 110,000 people can register. Why such a limit? And at the end of the day, 22,000 people registered, and the actual turnout is even lower. When Hong Kong integrates more and more with China, I'm sure more Hong Kong people will live on the mainland. Now there are a few 100,000 already. So my first question, do we have data on the number of Hong Kong voters living on the mainland? Of course, they are in different parts of the country. And in fact, Hong Kong offices, place, or premises can be used for voting. Well, if a voter lives in Beijing, well, he won't fly to the control point to vote. I think if the polling station is close to their residence, then they will vote. I'm sure most people live in Guangdong province, and members are most concerned about that. I hope that the Secretary should find ways to convenience people to vote. Right, Secretary. Hong Kong people on the mainland, and arrangements for them to vote. Thank you, Chairman. Let me say again in Cantonese, we attach great importance to Hong Kong residents who are on the mainland and for them to exercise the right to vote. I hope that you will believe in me. During the pandemic, under the anti-epidemic arrangements, well, we have considered the whole situation. So that's why we have put in place the polling station arrangement at the boundary control point for LCGE. Mr. Lam mentioned 110,000. That is our highest capacity. Given the overall arrangement at the boundary control points, at the end of the day, around 17,000 Hong Kong residents voted at those polling stations. This is mainly because of the personal choice of the Hong Kong voters. We just try our best to facilitate their voting in the future. Well, actually, in the past, we already mentioned a point that we need to consider different arrangements. For example, is there the need? And how can we do pre-registration arrangements? How can we effectively deliver ballot boxes to and from the mainland polling stations? And what about polling and counting ballot papers? How do we make use of the law? And will there be risk in the process? And how do we take care of emergency situation in polling stations outside Hong Kong? How can we maintain law and order? All these involve legal operations and coordination with the mainland. And because there are so much factors for consideration, if you can't make all necessary arrangements, and if you adopt this arrangement hastily, there will be chaos. And at the same time, there may be the need for law enforcement on the mainland and other very concrete work. So we stress that before there is a feasible, comprehensive plan, so far we do not have the plan yet to arrange voting on the mainland. Of course, we'll continue to do more work to assess the feasibility, and if necessary, we will adopt other measures to facilitate Hong Kong people to exercise their right to vote on the mainland. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Mr. Yukong, please. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, colleagues, greetings. Overall speaking, I agree to this report. In the LCGE, the government did quite a good job on many fronts. I have a follow-up question for the Secretary. In this report, well, 39,000 civil servants were recruited as workers, and on the 19th of December, there was also overtime work pay. How much was that? Comparing with the first election, was there an increase or decrease in terms of staff costs? On the 19th of December, during counting of votes, well, many of our colleagues were on site. I think the counting procedure has room for improvement. Well, on many tables, well, the whole team did not have work for 1 to 2 hours. People just sat and waited for the arrival of the ballot papers. So if the procedure is improved, then I think we can save a lot of overtime work pay. So, Secretary, is there room for improvement? Okay, Secretary, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Yim Kong's question. First of all, in the LCGE, concerning staff costs, now actually REO is doing the calculation, and so far we do not have a specific figure to do a comparison with the previous LCGE. So we are sorry that we still cannot produce some information on that. But it is a fact that in terms of number of staff, the number is a lot more. So concerning counting on site, some workers were left idle. I said just now that for the whole counting procedure, there are many different parts. First, there are 600 odd polling stations, and all the ballot boxes had to be transported to the central counting stations. And there is this handover process, and then the ballot boxes have to be opened, and then the ballot papers have to be checked and counted.
So we divided the labor like a production line. Some people are responsible for opening boxes, splitting the votes, and some people are observing the votes, counting the votes, etc. So these steps are all divided into different parts. And indeed, when one thing is happening, one step has not been completed yet, and before that step has completed yet, the next step cannot really start immediately, right? That's a possibility. But overall, what Councillor Yim has mentioned is definitely correct. If we could do better, if we could do it more efficiently, then we could try to reduce the amount of time we spend. That would reduce the amount of staff costs. That is definitely correct. That's a goal that we aspire to. And I should say that in the previous election, overall, we have spent 11 hours to complete all the 3 constituencies, the geographical constituencies, functional constituencies, and the ECC. That's a record-breaking time for us. And in the future, through improving our processes, through enhancing efficiency, we hope that we could do even better in the future so that we could reduce the staff costs overall. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. So the final question is from Councillor Jie Wai-zhen. Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. So firstly, I would like to congratulate the Secretary and congratulate their colleagues because it's very difficult to host 3 elections across the span of 9 months. And thanks to all your hard work when it comes to optimizing the election, you have done a lot of very good work. And before the election, everybody is saying that you have all the time in the world. After election, before the election, everything is hasty. After election, you have all the time in the world. That's always something that happened. But these days, I think that you have done a lot of work in a quite timely manner, like elderly priority queues, like electronic voting, voter registration, electronic vote counting, and also the polling stations at the border. So all of that was quite successful. I congratulate you. So on the 19th of May, there was the Filipino general election, and my domestic helper has cast her vote, and I hope that in the future we could do more than we would have achieved just now. But when it comes to our fellow citizens living in the mainland, I hope that they could cast their vote as well. Maybe they could cast by mail-in ballot or in another way. And at the same time, when it comes to counting the votes, after I congratulate you, I have also to criticize you. When we go to these large residential blocks, when it comes to counting the votes of incorporated owners, everybody is able to count their votes quite efficiently, right? Why does it take so much time in Hong Kong public elections? You mentioned that there are a lot of processes. You have to check and validate the votes, etc., before you actually count the votes. Based on my understanding, the computer itself could already eliminate all of these potential problems. It will automatically warn you. You don't have to count these things automatically, right? In other words, you have doubled everything, all the workload, and you did not use the AI to handle the workload for you, and you should look into that. Well, as one of my colleagues have said, that the current system cannot be adapted in a Hong Kong-wide election, right? I think you should improve on that. And next, I would like to talk about the vote counting in the HKCEC. The design of the process is quite chaotic. I'm sorry. I must ask you, why is it so chaotic, right? I was a bit worked up that day. I apologize. But a lot of our colleagues, be it the media, the electoral campaign staff, and people who participate in elections, our citizens, everyone thought that the arrangements were quite chaotic and quite a mess. So I want to ask you, why was it such a mess? Okay, Secretary, it's also about the counting of the votes. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jie. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for supporting our work. And thank you for proposing many valuable comments and recommendations. Okay, indeed, in the past 2 elections, we have adopted some new measures, including what Councillor Tse has mentioned. We have special priority queues or cross-border arrangements, etc. And in the future, we hope that the arrangements of Hong Kong elections could continue to be improved and optimized. The purpose is simple. We have always emphasized fair, just, and honest elections. And in the future, we would like to add humane elections and highly efficient and safe elections. Beyond our traditional targets, these are our new targets. So how should we do this? Do electronic means or by mail-in ballots, etc., or cross-border voting, etc.? We're open to all of those suggestions. As long as it helps what are achieving the aims that I've just mentioned, we are very willing to look into these possibilities and implement them, just as the attitude I have taken towards the other measures. But after all, when it involves when we're talking about election involving so many voters, if the arrangements are not proper, it would create chaos, and then we would achieve a bad end despite all our good intentions. So, Councillor Tse, please do not worry. We have heard your voice, and we would take your opinion seriously to see if they work. So, when it comes to the counting of the votes on the day, it's mainly about the security arrangements, etc. On that front, we would humbly listen to all the opinions from our councillors, and we would learn from our experience and our mistakes. And we hope that after learning our lessons, we would do better. So through continuous hard work, we hope that we could continuously to improve, and we constantly seek any room to improve ourselves. If you have any further opinions and advice on that, I welcome you all to express your opinions and advice. And thank you, Chairman. So thank you, Secretary. Here ends our agenda item number 3, and now we enter agenda item number 4, the 2022 voter registration campaign. So the government has provided a policy paper document, and furthermore, the Honorable Carmen Kan Wai Man has also issued a letter to the EAC dated 26th of March, and we have also listed out as part of the agenda item. And on the 7th of April, the EAC has also responded to Carmen Kan Wai Man's letter, and we have also included that letter. So here and now, firstly, perhaps I would like to invite Madam Kong Carmen from the Bureau of Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. So I know that they have to, spend some time to handle the switch. So I'll let them have some time to deal with that first. So if the government representatives are ready, we could begin. So I ask everyone to be patient and wait just a little bit. So I ask all the panel members to be patient. The Bureau's representative will be ready soon. We could begin. Are you ready now? Okay. Okay, if the government representatives are ready, we would like to invite the Deputy Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, Ms. Carmen Concaman, to offer a brief introduction for it. So, hello, Chairman. Hello, all panel committee members. Today, we will be talking about the year 2022 voter registration campaign and the work we have done. So, as usual, our department would do voter registration campaign. So our main target is to encourage the qualified voters to register as a voter. And we would remind everyone that this year on the 2nd, you have to amend and update your registration by the 2nd of June. And we would remind all new voters when you apply for registration as a voter, starting from this year, you have to provide a proof of address when you change your address. So now we would like to invite my colleague to introduce to you the details of our voters registration campaign. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, panel members. This document is designed to introduce to you our plans for year 2022 voter registration campaign. In order to work on the year 2022 voters registration campaign, we would like to encourage the qualified voters to register as a voter. And secondly, we would like to remind the voters who have already registered to update their registered information with our department in a timely manner, particularly if you've moved to another address. So with regards to this election cycle, for this, the deadline for updating your registration would be the 2nd of June in year 2022. In accordance with the year 2021 improvement on the registration rules and voter rules, in order to enhance the accuracy of voter registration information, if you have registered as a voter after the 1st of May year 2021, you have to provide a proof of address in order to verify whether or not you are living at the address that you're registered as a voter for. So the qualified voters, starting from now to the 2nd of June, you could apply with the office anytime. Please do not wait till the deadline. If you do, you risk missing out on registering as a voter. And if you're already registered as a voter, you do not need to register again. But if your registration information, particularly if you have changed your address, or if you have changed other information, please, you have to also notify the Electoral Affairs, the REO before the deadline of 2nd of June, and to provide the relevant proof documents so that we could update our registration information and record it in the official voter rolls. And we also encourage that our voters, after you have changed any of your information, please inform the office as soon as possible. Do not wait till too close to the deadline. So in year 2022, the voter registration and the cancellation of voter registration will be published before the 1st of August for public viewing. So the public members are able to apply for access or oppose the voter rolls, and the officers will make an assessment in accordance with the complaints. And the REO will publish an official voter roll before the 25th of September. So our department will continue to learn from our past experience, and we have established the plans for year 2022 voter registration campaign. Our overall strategy is to use many channels to increase the understanding and educate the public when it comes to voting registration. We would like to encourage voters to register as qualified voters to register as a voter, and we'd like to encourage them to update their information. The year 2022 voter registration campaign also includes reminding that everyone could use the online voter registration information system, and you could also use our hotline to register your information. And furthermore, we would like to recommend that our voters update their contact information, and we would like to educate the public on the importance pertaining to offering us true and accurate information. The year 2022 voter registration has 4.4 million registered voter. So in our established voter registration campaign, we have already put details of vote plans from paragraph 10 to 13 in our policy documents. You could see our activities they're divided into three aspects. Firstly, we would conduct an ad campaign on traditional media and traditional printed print, including on television, on radio shows, and on public transportation, like the MTR. We will also display our ads, and we will also hoist various ads in public spaces. So it covers really quite a lot of ground, and the information that of voter registration could be effectively spread to many groups. And secondly, through social media, on online platforms and social media platforms that people frequent, and on mobile apps, we will publish electronic ads.
More direct ways are used in order to disseminate the information to the public to enhance publicity effect. And number three, with more targeted approach, eligible persons are contacted and we encourage them to register as voters. Besides, for those who have moved, well, they are reminded to update their information. First of all, under the Immigration Department, under the Registration of Persons Office, and also at the Smart Hong Kong ID Card Replacement Center, voter registration desks are set up. Number two, we send letters to some new housing estates and developments to remind voters to update their information. And we also remind those who have not registered to register. Number three, for secondary schools and tertiary institutions, we sent out registration form and posters. We asked the schools to collect application forms submitted by students. In order to meet the above work needs, our EO had provided 6 million for the work. So that's all from me, Chairman. Members are most welcome to give us comments. Thank you. Thank you. Now I will read out colleagues who have raised their hands. First, Mr. Chen Ho, Leung Mei Fan, Duk Chi Yun, Lee Chun Keung, and Carmen Tan. So I will allow 4 minutes for each, including both question and answer. First, Mr. Chan Yong. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Permanent Secretary. I want to talk about voter registration. This is done every year. So we want to make sure that the work is better and more user-friendly. This year, well, it is difficult to expect border opening with the mainland within the short term, and there are 500,000 Hong Kong people there. So before the 2nd of June, if the border is still not reopened, how can we help them register or update their information? Well, the officers in the mainland, can they contact Hong Kong people there and give them help? Besides, in the past, when we registered voters or when we changed addresses for them, well, address proof is only needed if voters want to change their address. But now, when new voters want to register, they have to also submit residence proof, address proof. Now, under the pandemic, for new voters, if they have to get address proof for the latest 3 months, sometimes it may not be convenient. And in Hong Kong, it is voluntary for voters to register. So can we offer them more convenience? And when government does a random check, can the text be bigger and more user-friendly to make things convenient for voters to register? In the past, sometimes because the font was too small, and so they did not update the information and the status was cancelled. And for address proof, sometimes people need to do an oath or declaration at the district office. But now under the pandemic, it may not be easy to do that. So can some convenience be provided for the voters, for existing voters to maintain their status, and for new voters to register? So that's my point. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chan Yong. So concerning the convenience of voter registration and any assistance that the government can offer. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for the suggestions. I think the suggestions are really helpful. Let me respond. So concerning submission of application forms, now all the registration forms can be downloaded online. And for completed forms, the forms can be returned to REO via email. So postal is not the only channel. If there are inquiries, REO hotline will be helpful to the voters. They can also contact mainland officers in order to get assistance. With regards to address proof, we understand that some residents may not have address proof handy, but then they may have submitted forms to the REO already, where REO will contact these residents. They may need to submit address proof later. We accept different forms of address proof. So the address proof may not necessarily be water or electricity tariff invoices. There can be other forms. The statutory deadline this year is 2nd June, and even after June, well, before the issuance of the provisional voter register, if voters can produce address proof to the REO, REO will try our best to help voters to register or update information. Okay. Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Leung Mei Fan. Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions. First, I have asked the first question for many years. In 2016, 2017, the voter information of 3 million voters had disappeared. And at the end of the day, nothing much was done. So many people are of the view that the internal technology system is very problematic. And recently, well, some managers can divert information to their own email account. And so there's leakage of information. Well, is there any criminal element in that? And has there been investigation into potential breach of the law? Second, I just received news saying that for the candidate of the CE election, his YouTube account was being under sanction. And a few years ago at this panel, I lodged a complaint as a candidate. My email was suspended and I have made complaints, and it was only reopened after 7 days. And as a result, there was unfair competition. So in Hong Kong, I think we rely too much on foreign systems. So people can use very simple ways to interfere with our fair election. And this time, regarding the CE election, for some political reasons, YouTube account can be suspended. I think this is outrageous. I think the government should look into a system to protect our system so that it is not interfered with. Two questions from me. Representative from the Bureau, please. I will ask Mr. Ho to talk about leakage of information. After that, regarding CE election, I will respond to Ms. Leung's question. Right, REO, please. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Leung's question. Regarding the recent incident, where there is a staff of the REO who did not follow our guidelines. So he transferred information to his personal email account for the sake of convenience of work, and the information was then sent to an unknown receiver or recipient. We reported the incident to the police. The police successfully contacted the recipient. After police investigation, it is confirmed that the recipient did not open that email with the voter information, and that email was deleted already. And I sent a letter to inform the relevant voter. And we also told him about the police investigation outcome. We asked them to pay attention to unknown communication of unknown source. Now, we had also reported to the Data Privacy Commission, and they will do investigation. And then REO will work with the working group under the CAB and also the Government Information Office to review data security and also protection of people's privacy. Relevant measures will be adopted to guard against the reoccurrence of this incident. Chairman, what do you mean by appropriate measures? Can you please be more specific? We have had our first meeting with the working group, and we are discussing. They asked us to provide information so that the Government Information Technology Office will discuss with us as well in order to come up with suggestions on improvement. So far, we still need to work with the IT office of the government in order to come up with some outcome. So, okay, second question. Right. CE election candidate, his account was banned. In today's news report, it is said that a candidate's social media account was suspended. So in relation to use of media by the candidate, I think he has already made a response. But concerning information security for the CE election, well, some election committee members' information was involved, so we attach much importance to data security. We have employed a third party to do risk assessment and to review the security of the system. The Police Technology Crime Investigation Bureau also provided their views and support based on our requirements to make sure that on the polling day, the system can function safely. And then concerning the use of electronic poll register, all the information will be encrypted and stored on the government's cloud. So all these measures are adopted in order to make sure that the operation of the election will be safe and electors' information can be protected in a sound way. Chairman, just one point from me. I hope that they will follow up and give me a written reply on the investigation. Actually, foreign countries are interfering with our fair and open election by suspending social media accounts. We need to make sure that our candidates can exercise their right to do fair publicity for the sake of a fair election. Well, point noted. I hope the administration has heard Ms. Leung Mei Fun. Next, Mr. Dik Chi Yuen, please. Thank you, Chairman. Voter registration and publicity is often done, and I think there is not much room for work on the elders and adults. I think the emphasis is on young people. We want to encourage them to register as voters, as colleagues said. Concerning the electoral system, young people may have different understanding. So in terms of encouraging young people to register as voters, does the administration have some concrete ways to encourage more participation? Now, concerning the voter or poll register, how many of the voters' registrations are invalid already? Sometimes we know that some people have already moved. So do you have such information are you doing such a review on the percentage of invalid registration? And how are you going to tackle the situation? Thank you. Permanent Secretary, invalid voter registration records, please. Well, on Mr. Dick's point about publicity on voter registration, and how can we encourage members of the public to register, especially among young people? Later on, I will ask the REO to comment on cancelled registration from the poll register. Now, concerning young voters, well, our publicity approach is multi-pronged.
So, for example, there would be some ad campaigns on radio or on visual media, and apart from that, we would also place more ads on mobile apps and platforms, particularly targeting the young. When they are going to swap their old Hong Kong ID for a new one, the REO has already put personnel in place in those centers to set up some registration counters, and that could effectively make sure that when our citizens get their new Hong Kong ID, they could update their voter registration at the same time. So, Chairman, I would like to add one thing. For young people work, according to, for making it more convenient for them in terms of procedures, the most important thing is, the point I would make is that the young people may have a different understanding when it comes to the new electoral system. If you learn more about that, that would be more helpful. They might not find it inconvenient to register. They might just not want to register. So on that issue, in the upcoming electoral information, or when it comes to the improved electoral arrangements, just like in the previous agenda item, we have already discussed that in that agenda already. And in the future, after the improvement of the electoral system, some citizens across all walks of life, they could better understand what the current system is. And I hope that that would help the voters gain a better understanding of our new electoral system. So what about the voter registration? So with regards to Councillor Dick's question on the voter registration, so the accuracy and the reliability of the voter registration on that issue in the year 2022, just as before, we will do a series of reviewing and measures, including in the year 2021 LCGE, the issued poll cards informing them the vote will have to be returned to verify that information. The Housing Bureau would also verify the information, and we will also do random spot checks on existing voters, and we will also verify whether or not the information on your voter registration is accurate, like suspected false registration, etc. And when it comes to some removed buildings, which have been already demolished, we would verify that information. If we found information that we suspect when that the voter is no longer living at that place exclusively, and we would issue letters to all these voters, and before the legal deadline, in other words, 2nd of June, they have to respond to our letter to confirm that their registered address is their only address. If not, we would put them on the cancellation list issued on the 1st of August. And after issuing that list, if the voter could provide a counterclaims letter to the REO, and in the end, a magistrate would make a final decision. So when we put these voters onto the cancellation list, at the end of July this year, we would once again issue another letter to these people to remind them that before 28th of August, they must supply their counterclaims in order to update their information. We would use a yellow envelope, not a red envelope, and we would write on the cover reminding you to update your voter information. These series of measures ensures that the information registered on the voter registration is accurate and reliable. Thank you. Next question comes from Councillor Lei Zhenkeng. Councillor Lee, please. So, Chairman, thank you. I would like to ask about the recent leak of voter registration. So this time, on the 25th of March, according to news reports, this is not the first time the voter rolls have been leaked. In year 2017, in the Asia World Expo, the REO have lost 2 laptops, and in those laptops, there were the information of 1,200 ECC members and the information of 3 million plus registered voters in Hong Kong. Obviously, the REO have not learned from their mistakes, particularly during the pandemic, because they wanted to make it easier for their colleagues to work at home. All 300 members of their department is able to access their government email from home, and they could access voter registration. And unfortunately, on the 25th of March, another further leak of such information have happened. And I myself have almost been a victim of fraud because of this leak of voter registration. Someone who claims to be from the Shanghai Gamsan Jinshan public security branch, who has my HKID information, and he told me that there's I was involved in a case pertaining to a vaccine in mainland, and he needs money from me. Of course, I did not wire money to him, but I was rather afraid because he has my personal information. So I would like to ask, as a matter of fact, what does REO do in order to protect the privacy of our citizens to avoid further leaks from happening? Because voter registration information is very private information. It includes address or HKID. And if unfortunately the criminals have gained access to such information would mean that the citizens would believe in these fraudulent calls, and the consequences would be disastrous. And furthermore, in the long term, would you consider making all voters automatically registered as a voter after they reach the age of 18 so that they do not have to bother registering additionally? So firstly, let me respond to the second question by Councillor Lee first, with regards to the automatic registration for all 18-year-olds. And then our colleagues from the REO would talk about the first question. So with regards to the current laws and guidances on voter registration, we adopt a voluntary registration arrangement. And of course, there are, in some examples overseas, we also see that they mandate all citizens to register as a voter. That's mandatory. And that's a significant policy change, because in these other countries, the way they do things is that if they mandate registration, then in the other words, if you do not register, there would be consequences. There would be potential punishments or other measures in order to mandate all citizens to register as a voter. So I think the citizens and the public, we will listen to their opinions as well. We listen to the voices. But right now, in Hong Kong, we adopt a voluntary registration measure, and this measure is effective because right now 92.5% of eligible voters have registered as voters. So if we suddenly have to switch to another system, I think that would require a consensus in society after much debate and much discussion across society. We need to look into this policy and research this policy. And as for protecting voter information, I would let the REO respond. Thank you for your question. So just now, Councillor Lee have said that we have 300 computers distributed to our colleagues. I would like to clarify that they often use the government email system in order to make sure that all the information is protected. We have installed security software on all those computers. It requires a security password to log in, and you need a security access code before you can access the computer. The colleague in question did not get one of those laptops because he or she does not access the system regularly. And as we have said in our internal circulations, when you handle sensitive information, when you handle the confidential information, you should not use the government email. The colleague in question did not follow those guidelines. So it's very difficult to avoid same thing happening, right? If in the future someone deliberately not follow the guidelines and he or she did that, what would happen? So I agree with everything you say, and this incident shows that our colleagues' understanding is not clear enough, and I think it would be necessary to improve the practices. And in order to plug up this loophole as soon as possible, the corresponding team who are all our colleagues of EO grade 2 and below, we have imposed new measures on their access to our system. They could not send public emails to a private email address. And secondly, when they access website, they cannot really use the email addresses from mainstream internet suppliers. In other words, they cannot use their private email addresses to send out those emails, and that would effectively plug that gap, plug that loophole. So thank you. Councillor Lee, do you have any follow-up questions? No more, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, understand. So next question is from Carmen Khan Wyman. Councillor Khan, perhaps you have not unmuted yourself yet. Perhaps you could remind Carmen Khan Wyman to unmute herself first. Perhaps there's something amiss when it comes to the operations. Secretariat, members of the Secretariat, please remind Councillor Carmen Khan Wyman. It's your turn. Yes, please unmute her, please. Thank you, Chairman. I've unmuted myself. Thank you, Chairman. So, particularly on the voter registration campaign, I would like to ask Councillor Kong and Mr. Wong. Sorry, I would like to add Madam Kong and Mr. Wong. The voter registration campaign is quite clear. We'd like to invite all eligible voters to register and register themselves in the right constituencies. There's been a lot of changes to our electoral system, including the changes in functional constituencies, the redrawing of boundaries of geographical constituencies, and there's also the ECC these days. And therefore, we need to make sure that our voters register at the correct constituency. And thirdly, we need to make sure that the information that they have given us is accurate. And I hope that as we engage in the 2022 voter registration campaign, we would try to do better in these three aspects. Do not do what we have always done before, because in the past we would just put ads, print ads and media ads, etc. We have done these things for decades. Could we do a more down-to-earth measures, like offering some summary of information, infographics, to make sure that our citizens understand which constituency they belong? Because iSmart is also very important, as I understand that only 1.2 million of our voters have registered on the app. So can we incentivize our voters to use iSmart and register a voter? That would be killing two birds with one stone. And furthermore, I would like to talk about the importance of smart government, Chairman, because all of our data have not been shared throughout different departments, and that has been exposed as one of the flaws during the pandemic. And we have spent a lot of people and manpower to verify all this information. So this time, on the 23rd of March and 25th of on the 25th of March announcement, one government employee has illegally sent the information pertaining to 12,000 voter registration voters to their private email in order to verify the information with the Housing Bureau. So why are we doing these things today? You know, when responding to my letter, they have quoted Chapter 6 from 541A, Cap 541A. It says that the REO is empowered to acquire documents from various government departments and that's how they verify information. So it has been proven that this is a very risky thing for both the REO, for the EAC, when it comes to EAC as a legally designated body to perform monitoring work. I would like to remind all of them. So today we have a law to ask us. We need a law to empower one department to ask another department to do something. We have not been able to integrate all these departments together. We are not a smart government which shares all the data. So in this incident, we see that 300 members of our staff are allowed to work from home, and their laptops naturally could be connected with the REO systems. But the employee who made the mistakes is not one of those 300 employees. They do not have, he or she does not have that laptop. They probably want to do well in their jobs, whatever. Therefore, they have supplied that information to one of his or her private mailboxes, and in the end, that's a wrong thing to do. And after investigation, the AAC decided that there was no loss because the police has intervened and saying that actually the person who got the email did not open up that email, and we are very thankful. In the end, this information was not leaked, and the government said that they have already notified the relevant voters. I would like to reflect on that issue. In this day and age, why are we still using manual power to do data verification? Just as what Mr. Wong has said, you will be doing that, right? You are prepared to ask the housing department to obtain information from them to verify the registration. So we have smarter ways. Why won't we do these smarter ways? And when the citizen has already left one of the public housing, publicly registered housing, why isn't the update process done automatically? Sorry, when the EAC responded, they said that they have already asked the REO to do this, and the REO, with this opportunity, perhaps you could explain to the public what have you done in this regard in terms of internal controls to, apart from reminding their employees. I think in this day and age, we could not just rely on reminding our employees. We must have active monitoring measures which are effective, and that could, make sure we will remind them everything, be it in the LegCo incident or this information leakage incident. We cannot just depend on a rule and to make sure and assume that the relevant personnel will adhere those rules.
Thank you, Ms. Kan. Well, time is up. To see whether there is easier arrangement so that members of the public can get information. For example, on their subsector, well, we are able to tell the eligibility. So concerning provision of information on FC and also other subsectors, there is the eligibility concern on different subsectors. We will do it through different trade associations and bodies and groups to contact the eligible voters. So through these channels, we can disseminate information to them so that the members will know which sectors will they be eligible to register in. And just now, Ms. Kan talked about government's use of information. So will other departments' information be used for the purpose of connection or linkage? We will work with other departments to see whether the information can be made electronic and more convenient. And we want to make sure that information is collected in a safe way. For example, Housing Department does information check with REO, and we have to get the consent of the Privacy Commission. When different departments gather information, they have to comply with requirements under privacy law. For example, when members of the public produce information, is it for the same purpose when they get information, and future use of the information has to be approved by the commissioner, privacy commissioner. So when information is verified, we hope that the process can be more convenient and direct. We understand that we may not be able to get information of all members of the public, but if we are able to put in place more convenient arrangements, then we will try and we will also consider. So regarding EAC's response, I'll see whether there is any supplement from Mr. Wong. Yes, please. Mr. Wong, thank you for the question. As said just now, this time regarding the incident, the government IT office, REO and CAB had set up a working group to review the whole process to make sure that this kind of incidents will not happen again. Actually, in the relevant groups, when people make use of government's email system, well, information cannot be sent to personal email accounts. Besides, the computer cannot get access to email service providers' websites in Hong Kong. So we are now working on that. We look at whether the poll register can be further enhanced so that all the work processes can take place within the electronic poll register system to make sure that this kind of incident will not happen again. Okay, I will be the last one to ask questions. I have two areas of questions. First, voter registration arrangements. Just now, different colleagues had given their comments. We need to start the VR campaign, but then now we are still under the pandemic. And I understand that Hong Kong people in the mainland number quite a lot. And because of the pandemic, they cannot come back for the time being. If they want to change the registration particulars, or if people want to register as voters, then I think the administration should put in more effort to take care of these people. For instance, mainland liaison officers will be quite helpful in this regard. Now, because of the pandemic, people can't come back to Hong Kong. I think their needs should be taken care of. Besides, today, a number of colleagues mentioned their concern about loss of voters' information. It seems that incidents have been happening repeatedly. Ms. Carmen Can today referred to her letter to you and also the letter from EAC to her. But then after all these correspondences, do you really have a more systematic deterrent mechanism to guard against such problem? In the previous session, it is said that in the LCGE, there were problems with the external contractor. So I think this is about internal management problem. And I think you need to really face up to all these problems. And my third point is a comment. I want it to be recorded. Well, Mr. John Lee, candidate in the CE election, all of a sudden his social media account was suspended. I think this is a very serious matter. It seems that foreign power or elements are trying to interfere with our election. And I'm worried that this is going to be a precedent, and there will be other incidents coming up. Next time when we have election, then there will be interference with the fair operation of our election. So I hope that you can contact with the relevant parties, because this is really a very serious matter. So this is my comment. For my two questions, I want to see whether there is any answer from the administration. Thank you, Chairman. Under the pandemic, there are Hong Kong people on the mainland who may want to register as voters or update their particulars. Well, today, many members have given their comments to us. We will work with colleagues in our mainland office. So there are some websites where people can download forms, and they can also submit forms. And our mainland offices will let Hong Kong people on the mainland know that there are these channels. REO hotline is also available for inquiries. So I think the information can be passed on to residents to offer them more convenience. As the chairman said, concerning election matters, when REO handles information and system security, well, of course, the administration attaches much importance. As said just now, a working group has been set up comprising members of the CAB, Government IT Office, and also REO. So this time, there was leakage of voters' information, but this is not a standalone incident. On the whole, we would like to help REO to enhance security of the system and do more with staff training and enhance people's awareness. And on hardware and software needs of the REO, we hope to do an overall review so that there can be overall enhancement. If necessary, if REO needs assistance or support and resources, the Bureau is more than happy to offer support to REO. So actually, we attach much importance to election work. So after the incident happened, we immediately set up a working group to conduct a comprehensive review. And then concerning CE election, well, we have heard the chairman's comments. Thank you. Okay, one last follow-up. Just now, you said that there is a cross-departmental working group to review security of your system. So are you going to produce a review report? And can that report be given to this panel? Thank you. Chairman, for that working group, we will make suggestions to the REO. However, it will not be in the form of a report. When the working group has reviewed this incident, well, they will also review the system and staff training of REO. We will give recommendations at appropriate times. We can brief this panel on subsequent follow-up work. Okay, so I hope that you can let us know in due course because colleagues are quite concerned. Okay, thank you very much. So today, well, I think we can conclude our discussion of this particular agenda item. And finally, item 5, AOB, there is no other business for today. So I will declare that the meeting is adjourned here. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, government officials, for joining. Thank you very much.